I got
You mean you
garbage
changed
coming
it?
out the ink
No.
tank.
Oh, you mean you took it out though?
No,
Okay. How did I miss it?
Everything was closed down.
it's just very
If I had
simple,
11
but-
people here and the
Oh
only
my
thing,
God,
and the
I'd
only
have
thing,
left
and the only thing
Three of
keeping them
apartment
here
on
was
the
the
side of the
I would
street.
have chartered a bus.
Yeah.
And that
I'd
had
rent
snow
a
on
car
it.
and get out
What we
there.
voted
The
on.
language,
driving
the
shoveling
evaluation
myself
of
to
employee benefits in the future.
I'm sorry, show me
The last line, remember,
Jack?
Hope you have a good one.
Well, that's better than what you sounded like you had.
benefits in the future.
the okay.
A lot of people.
I didn't have
I just don't want
anybody
to
that
put
I'd
it
kick out.
but I'll leave it that way then.
Well, kicking out is a little bit strong.
Okay.
Okay, but you wanted to.
I kept on having the Weather Channel on and making comments like,
Hey,
well,
Roger.
it looks like maybe it was. Oh, we're out of milk.
Guest and fish are kind of, they both stink after 3 days.
I don't think I'm gonna join Timbers Resort. How about you?
No. Just a little short of the money.
I'm a little,
That's put a nice thing to try to use dogs to sell.
Yeah, I got a whole list of things for stuff, there were.
well, apparently they have dogs on.
The brochure.
Headline was,
Well, here they do.
they also did I talked to, they did an article on convention, on tourism and the convention bureau, and never once mentioned that we actually have an office right here, which is in this thing. They're
I guess the resorts have their own
definitely
dogs.
gonna sit down and talk about, yeah, they
You
have.
know what, somebody mentioned that to me the other day, and I said,
Headline
you know,
was
you know what, I just told them, I said, don't believe everything.
I have
Because I said, you can now watch it online.
saying that
We'll
try to
talk, it was before the holidays, so we're gonna talk to them, but what was,
Just see what was
again,
going on.
I mean, nobody's actually made a comment to me about
get
it,
into
but
their
what was
homes.
unfortunate is only if you were
Apparently
to
the
look at the
voicemail
issue
was,
prior,
welcome to
the issue
Cuba.
prior used the same terminology on the
Nobody forgives
so you have one
Nobody
edition that says former,
I said, you people from New Jersey
former
are
people
used to
indicted,
that.
and the next one's former employees given, and somebody goes, well, is this the same?
Yeah.
They do have an issue.
Unfortunate sort of deal. Wow, we did, what time we got? This Patreon? Our screens are not on.
I think we've already looked at these things.
I agree.
This is all Ways and Means stuff that's already been done. All right, let's go ahead and we'll call this meeting to order if everyone wants to join me in a pledge of allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and the first item is the approval of the minutes of the town council meeting of December 5th. First, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second? Second.
Anybody have any changes, comments? All right, hearing none, do I, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Mayor's update, I just have a couple things that I'd like to update everybody on. First of all, I hope everybody had a good holiday and a good Christmas, and a good New Year. A couple updates. One is our beach renourishment project, which, as everybody recalls, we had two separate projects. One which was aimed at putting sand along the areas that were close to structures, which were primarily the ocean course and the Turtle Point holes that are alongside the ocean. That project has been done, completed actually earlier in December, so has been finished for a while. The second project was resulting from the other permit, which was going to allow us to do dune renourishment along Eugenia, the properties specifically that were close to the ocean and saw a lot of damage to their dunes. Also the beach club and to the sanctuary. The intent had been to have all of that done last week, but a little bit of snow and ice got in the way. Contractors obviously couldn't do anything anything at all last week. So we are almost done. Eugenia was finished, all of the Eugenia area was finished well prior to Christmas. The group couldn't do anything last week. They were back out there yesterday. The beach club was finished. I think Jim's not here, but I think he told me the beach club was finished yesterday or today. And the only thing that is left is the sanctuary, and that they will be hopefully finishing by the end of this week. So once that's done, the entire project is completed. The initial numbers I've seen show that we're coming in at or probably significantly under the budget that we had proposed or estimated earlier. So that project's come along good. I don't know if any of you have been out to look at the dunes. If you haven't, I really encourage you to do it. It's interesting to see what they did. I'm certainly pleased with you know, the size, what we've gotten for it, and it'll be interesting over the next year to see what happens. So, but anyway, we're almost done. Second thing is the storm impact seems to be over, and I expect that over the next days and weeks we'll probably hear a number of very well-meaning suggestions on what we could do in the future to deal with an ice storm and snowstorm. And the only thing I would say is that some things, frankly, you just can't reasonably plan for. And I think this was one of them. But I do think that the staff, both Kika's staff and the town staff, did those things that I think we reasonably could do and reasonably should have done. We did try to ensure that our residents had as much information as they possibly could about particularly the conditions on the island. They were participating in conference calls with the county. The county had it actually put in place their whole emergency process just like that they would in the middle of a hurricane. And I particularly want to thank Stephanie Braswell and Stephanie Tillerson for all the time and effort they spent collecting that information and getting out our different bulletins. The second thing we could do, in addition to getting information out, was obviously focusing on public safety. We did that. We had a large number of officers on the island all the time. In fact, on Thursday morning at one point I counted about 10 officers that we had on the parkway. And I additionally then want to thank the county sheriff and Captain Martin, who's our coordinator for all their work. We had that morning when the parkway was completely iced over, the bridge was pretty impassable. We had officers who were essentially manning both ends of the parkway, and what they were doing is backing up a group of about 7 or 8 cars, then escorting them in a caravan along the parkway over the bridge, so that we, you know, had a sense that one, giving people comfort that we could drive it and that they were in a position to stop traffic if it wasn't safe. So, you know, I think we did everything we could to at least try to look for the icy spots, and we had a lot of police presence. And we also, to the extent we can, did get Gary Otter and his people out there to put sand on the bridges, and we also had them put sand on some of the Kika bridges. There's only so much good. I mean, at the end of the day, the sand can only do so much. And there is no salt in existence anywhere nearby. So I think, again, I want to thank Rusty, actually, who was able to get Gary geared up and ready to go in hours, and Gary and his folks for getting out there. And they probably applied sand over 4 days, I don't know how many times, to ours and to Kika's property. And the only last comment I want to make is to thank our residents, because they actually did the smart thing this time. Nobody was out on the street. I think everybody stayed home and just had another cup of hot chocolate, and opted not to go out on the roads. And for the most part, they were absolutely empty until probably Friday, I think, when people started to go stir crazy. So. You know, I know, you know, after every kind of event, we spend some time saying, well, what could we do different? But frankly, on this one, this is one of those events that we could spend all day. We're not we're not gonna be out buying salt and snow plows and what have you. I think we handled it as best we could. Nobody got hurt. I think our residents did the right thing, so, I certainly thank the staff for their efforts, particularly since they had to really do everything from home. All of our employees and pretty much all of Kika's employees, for the most part, live on the other side of both bridges. And so none of them could have possibly gotten to work if they had wanted to. So anyway, we got through it. With that, I'll open it up to citizens' comments. If anybody has any citizens' comments with respect to anything that's on the agenda, come on up. Nothing. All right, then I'll move to new business. And the first item we have is the approval of our town attorney contract. We have two things here. We need to appoint our town attorney, which we do at the beginning of every year, and also at Ways and Means we approved, or we discussed and recommended to council the approval of a contract, a services agreement for municipal legal services with Hampton Green LLC. So what I'd like to do is make a motion to approve, a two-part motion. One, to approve a contract services agreement for municipal legal services with Hampton Green LLC, and to reappoint Dwayne Green as town attorney. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next item is information, is really information only, no action to take, but you've got a chart, and I don't know, is it on there where people can see it or not? I don't know. But every year we take another look at all of the council members' responsibilities and roles, which generally take one of two forms, either in some cases chairing different committees and or liaisons to different committees or other organizations. The chart in front of you really reflects both this year's assignments and also reflects that there are, with one exception, no changes from last year. So I won't go through all these, but essentially all of you have happily agreed to continue on with the same chairman responsibilities or liaison responsibilities as you had last year, with one exception, which is that Diana, for the last year, was the chair of the audit committee. And assuming everybody votes yes here in about 2 minutes, Jack is going to take on that role for next year.
My only comment there is apparently the fact that my wife and I have yet to be able to balance our checkbook after 41 years has apparently not been considered a holdback to assuming the chairmanship of this committee. And if that's just kind of like letting everybody have a disclaimer, fine with me.
And there was a day when I'd make a flippant remark to say that's probably okay with the town, but I'm not going to do that anymore. But anyway, thanks everybody for continuing to take on these roles. And I don't think people realize how much time and effort goes into to these committee roles. So those are out there for information purposes. So with that, I'll move to item C, which is that each year for our committees, their memberships are approved annually, and some of them occur at the January meeting, some of them occur at the February meeting, and so we have a few to handle today. I'm going to take them out of order on here. The first one is that I want to handle is the Arts Committee, and as I said, Jack Coe has agreed, thankfully, to take on the role of chair of the audit committee. What did I say, Arts?
Jack's over here clutching his heart.
Diana's going, oh.
I don't think Jack agreed.
But Diana did. Anyway, so I'd like to make a motion to appoint Jack Coe as chairman of the audit committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have to recuse myself.
Actually, you
I thought you were gonna vote no.
All right.
Demand a recount.
We also have committee appointments to the Arts Council, the Planning Commission, and the Public Safety Commission. And I guess what I'd ask, I'm going to take these as a single item for approval, but what I'd ask ahead of time is, why don't, if the chairs of each would just go through what the changes are, if any, Diana, Arts Council,
The only change is that Robert Hill has been moved to Operations Support Member, and that just means he no longer sources concerts, events, or prepares proposals. He basically is support from a marketing standpoint, helps out at different performances, and supports us logistically, like with video clips and things like that when we go to our planning meetings. So that is the only change. He's already a member. It's
So-
just changed his category, and we didn't change anything in the charter.
so all the members are staying the same?
All the members are staying the
Okay.
same.
The Planning Commission,
No change either. Larry Iwan's term expired, but he's agreed to serve on a new term, so all the members still stay the same.
okay, and Chris, Public Safety?
No changes, everybody was begging to stay on for another term.
All right, then with that, I would ask for a motion to approve the 2018 committee appointments for the Arts and Cultural Events Council, the Planning Commission, and the Public Safety Commission.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We then have four. I'm
sorry, Mr. Mayor, did you approve the audit committee members? I know you approved the new chair, but
Oh, that's right.
you didn't approve the actual committee members.
because I don't have in here a recommendation with those names on it.
Yeah.
Do I?
Yeah.
Not in
Yes,
my-
it's in
not
there.
Not
Yeah.
in my book.
It's behind,
Okay,
Right.
and Diana was going to do that, so she talked to the members.
Diana,
And-
why don't you tell us
And
what's changed
there's
there?
been no change to the charter or to the membership. All three people agreed to serve again.
All right, rather than amending my prior one, I'll move that we approve the members of the audit committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, sorry for that, miss. Then we have four contracts. One is the approval of the beach franchise agreement with Island Beach Services. Second is a preventive maintenance contract with Triad Mechanical. The third is a Greenery Kiawah Island proposal for cleanup of our material on the parkway, particularly dealing with a lot of the damage that we had as a result of the tropical storm. And the last is an approval of a Parkway Engineering Services proposal from Soil Consultants. All four of these proposals were reviewed and discussed at Ways and Means, and Ways and Means Committee has recommended them to Town Council for approval. So unless there is any objection or desire by council members to separate them or talk about any of them separately, I would ask for a motion to approve those four contracts.
So moved.
Could I talk about them now that we've, okay.
Let's get a second first.
Second.
Second, okay. All right. The only comment I was going to make is about the greenery, and Rusty and I had a discussion about this yesterday. Apparently, very few of the plants that we are replacing died because of salt water. And we had a discussion about that in the Ways and Means. But Rusty did assure me that those particular areas, even though it's not listed on this contract, you will look at them and not place plants in there that could again be.
If you look on the paper, the bid that they gave us,
Uh-huh.
you'll notice that most of the areas were to receive Spartina.
And Spartina's fine,
Which is
right.
salt tolerant. And so our conversation yesterday, we just are gonna look when we go out to review the plants, if they're in any of the areas that have been flooding, we will either change to Spartina or like Bruce grass.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah, also, as an aside, yesterday, both John and I had a conversation with Townsend, with
Mhm.
partners, and also raised the fact that we were gonna be looking at the types of vegetation we had some concerns because of the storm and some of the changing tides, that we might have some different latitude in the kinds of materials that we use to be more salt tolerant,
Mhm.
and that we would hope that the ARB would look kindly and work with us closely on
Good.
that, and I think we got a pretty good assurance that
Okay, that's
that
good.
would be the case.
All right.
Okay, so I have a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That takes us to a first reading of ordinance 2018-1, which is to amend the Town of Kiawah Island Code of Ordinances by creating Chapter 8, Fairness in Lodging Act Compliance and Article 4 Finance and Taxation. And Dorota, you're going to tell us about this and answer questions.
Yes, today, the staff asked the mayor and the town council to adopt this ordinance to enact the Fairness in Lodging Act, provisions. And, that will allow the town to begin a partnership with the South Carolina Department of Revenue in order to increase the compliance with the, tax payment from rentals. This act became a law in 2014, and it was due to the growing number of rentals in the state. And it was recognized that the South Carolina cities and towns need some assistance enforcing accommodation and sales taxes on rentals. And also it promotes fairness in pricing on the rental property, because those who do collect those taxes increase the prices. So, like for example in Kiowa, it's additional 14% that has to be collected from the renter and remitted to either South Carolina Department of Revenue or the county. On top of and plus the business license, but that's the smallest piece. So, just in a summary, for the tax purposes, South Carolina has 5 different types of rentals. There are hotels and motels, and the owner is responsible for sales taxes, accommodation taxes, and the business license. Rentals of second homes or investment properties, and it's the same. Owner is responsible for paying all those taxes and the business license. Rentals, well, there's also a property tax difference, but since we don't collect property taxes, it's, I did mention that, but those two are taxed at 6%. Rentals of primary residence between the 15 and 72 days a year, and those are taxed at 4%, but the owner is responsible for all the taxes and the business license. Final rentals of primary residence up to 14 days a year. An example is for like special events like the upcoming PGA or any big golf tournaments that relates to events on the island. In that case, the owner is actually exempt from the taxes, but if the property is rented through a travel agency like VRBO or HomeAway, they are responsible for sales tax and the business license. And finally, that I think it's not very popular on the island, but rental of a bedroom of 6 bedroom or less in your home. And in that case, usually they rent it through Airbnb or other rental platforms, and the business license is the only tax that is applicable for those owners. They exempt from other taxes. So, yes, sir.
Help me out a little bit here. This is South Carolina law right now.
Yeah.
So it already applies to Kiowa, right?
Well, yes, and this is just additional enforcing that the South Carolina Revenue is preparing with also staffing to share that information, share the sales tax returns. Right now, we can probably ask, but we have very little luck to get that information that we need.
So by adopting this as an ordinance also, it allows us and puts us in a different position where we're able to then, two things, we're able to share information with the state. And second, it allows us an enforcement mechanism, because if it's on our books as an ordinance, we then have the ability also to enforce additional penalties
And
around
we
payment
have
of
to-
And
taxes.
what do we get in return for this, taking on this enforcement burden?
Well, we do get percentage of all those taxes that are remitted. The sales tax goes to the state, but every other tax, the state accommodation percentage of it goes to us. local county accommodations, so it will be more revenue coming to us.
Okay, so to get it straight in my mind, we normally would get our percentage anyways, but by having this ordinance, we perhaps can increase.
Yes,
We have the authority to do something where
Excellent.
people who hadn't been paying might be paying now.
That's correct.
And then we would get some of that money that they start paying to the state.
That is correct, and
Okay.
with this, once, if you approve this ordinance, the next step will be, we will be sending the notices of applicable taxes to the taxpayers, and they will go to, all the properties at 6%, and, 4% that we indicate that are rentals. And, the county will send those notices for us, during the, property tax renewals. So it's also another way of communicating, because some people claim they didn't know taxes are due.
Who does the enforcement?
Us, the town.
The police, or we send them a letter? or-
No, it's our, yeah, we do, well, right now we did, we're working on the finance department is working on a business license audit. Part of it is also we compare it to the accommodation taxes listings that we get from the state. But the problem is with the management companies from the state, we don't get a listing, the detail. We only say, for example, Kiawah Island Golf Resort, the double, but we don't have a listing. So those additional steps will help get more information. It's still on us to make sure the the audit piece is going to be done by us, but we'll have more tools.
And how about if a person doesn't pay?
That doesn't pay?
Yeah.
Then we have actually, what do we have? I think $500 or up to 5 days in prison, which is consistent with our other.
Okay,
It's the same penalty as any of our other code
Yes.
compliance penalties.
okay.
Are you renting a room of your house?
No, I was just wondering why we were assuming this burden, what do we get for it?
Well, as
Why
I
do
understand,
we-
it's more information so that we can enforce the
Yes,
policy,
we can ask,
basically.
yes.
Yeah.
So, well, regardless of what kind of short rental property it is, someone has to pay taxes, even it's the owner or the travel company that is being rented through. So, this is just an extra tool for enforcing it.
So why don't
And
we?
I'm sorry, a lot of communities, like right now, Charleston County is sending those notices for Valley Beach and Isle of Palms.
If Pam Harrington rents something and she pays the tax, does she CC us, or do we get any information from her?
No, we don't, but no. We do see what she pays for business license. We see her application for business license, but not for the, however, when the state remits a state accommodation tax, they do send a listing, so we know how much she has paid.
Okay.
So we do know that.
What I'd like to do at this point, and then we can open it up for general discussion, is to first see if we have a motion to approve this on first, motion and a second to approve, and if we do, then we can open it up for discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, with that, then let me open it up, to, again, any additional questions or discussion or comment?
Well, just to, if I could foreshorten it, this gives us the authority to, what, knock on somebody's door, send them a letter saying you owe this amount of money?
That too, yes. But as also South Carolina Department of Revenue for that information first before we find that person, and make sure that they didn't comply before we knock on the door. But we do have in our ordinance right now, we do have an ordinance about the local accommodation tax that they have to be they have to pay that, but nothing says they have to pay state taxes in our ordinances. State accommodation, nothing says they have to pay sales taxes or the local option tax. So it kind of broadens up all the applicable taxes for rentals.
I think, Jack, if I can take a stab at this, and I don't wanna overplay the importance of this, but I think it's another tool
Yeah.
in the toolbox that the town has in order to ensure that we are managing our business license process as fairly and as fully as we can. You know, because the town doesn't have a property tax and we don't want one, we rely mostly on two things, our business licenses and our building permits as the primary source of revenue. And we have been, over the last few months, and this was a big part of some of the changes in the short-term rental policy, trying to do some things to make sure that we were trying to ensure as fair and complete compliance with our business license processes as possible. And that includes everything from, we're putting more effort into education and communication to make sure people understand what they're expected and required to do. We are putting more time into having, and Dorota's focused on a more complete audit process. And it's part of it is an issue of making sure that we are properly collecting our revenues, but also it is a fairness issue. We have today, in a different conversation pointed out, we have somewhere near or over a third of all residential properties in Kiowa now that are rental properties. And so rental of residence has become a major business on the island. And as a matter of fairness, I think, we see that the overwhelming majority of people do properly pay their business license revenues, they pay their accommodations taxes, but it's incumbent on us to make sure there's an even playing field and that those people who are not, whether it be intentional or whether it be out of a lack of knowledge, are in fact aware of and paying those taxes. And so, we've done some things on the business license side, like, making a change that all advertisements need to show the business license. What this is allowing us to do on the accommodations tax side is just open up another avenue of information with the state, so that as we are trying to understand whether we are aware of and getting the revenues that are due, that's happening and that we've got that information. We also find sometimes the issue isn't that people aren't paying, but it isn't coming to us. That because the state collects all of this, these monies could, depending on how properties are recorded and how they're filed, this money could be going to Charleston County, it could be going somewhere else, and these kinds of information sources help us get our arms around that. So I think that's the intent of what we're trying to do and what they're recommending with this.
Okay.
And I'm hoping Dorota will not say
Yeah,
I got it
kept
right,
doing
right? Yeah.
And we don't have exclusive jurisdiction. I mean, the state enforces this as much as we do.
Yes.
Or can.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Why not?
All right. Any other comments, questions? Or something I'm missing?
His answer under his breath is why not?
All right, well, on that note, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, there being no other business, town administrator report.
I only have one, Mayor, and that is, I just wanted to make a quick comment. I know Diana has sent across an email to all of council, and some of you all in the audience may have read in the Post and Courier about an article that was written about CARTA services. And Kiowa was singled out. There are some other communities that are also members of CARTA board that may not have the service. But in essence, we were thrown under the bus. And we do participate, we do attend those meetings. If the mayor cannot go, I sit in on his behalf. The meetings are very interesting, and granted, a lot of them are focused on Mount Pleasant, North Charleston, or Charleston area. Just as an example, last month I did ask staff, and I did question about what they're doing on Johns Island, and if they're providing any service on Johns Island, if they can come back with some sort of report for us in terms of what they're looking at. I know there's been some additional conversation at talking about having some sort of an express service from Citadel here to Kiowa. That discussion might be ongoing. I'm not quite sure of where they're at. That might be something they'll report on next week during the meeting, but we're still very active member, and we do participate in those meetings. So if any of you did read the article, I don't want you to think that we're not there. We're there, but for whatever reason, they decide to call us out.
Well,
As others.
and I'll use the opportunity, I wish the Island Connections were here, but to point out, as I will to the Post-Courier, that I think they made the statement or the insinuation that the thrust essentially was, well, why is Kiowa on the Carter board,
Right.
because we have no real stake or
Yeah.
in the
Skin
game.
Mhm.
And I would want to point out to them that while Kiowa has about 1% of the population in Charleston County, that we currently pay somewhere between 13 and 15% of all property taxes, which are paying for a large part of CARTA's services. Although I recognize that CARTA also gets a lot of money from federal grants and
Right.
other grants.
Oh, well, we pay federal taxes too.
Yeah, so I'll take great objection to any idea that we don't somehow have a stake in CARTA, because we're running the tab for an awful lot of their services. So we will continue to be an active part of the CARTA board. The fact that they don't happen to seem to want to provide or be able to provide much service to Johns Island or the residents on this end of the county is a separate issue that needs to get addressed. And there are, in fact, issues, mass transit issues that we have in Kiowa. We have now, based on the Citadel report, the equivalent of about 12,000 full-time jobs moving back and forth from other parts of the county to Kiowa every day. So if CARTA thinks that there is not an issue or
Right.
at Kiowa with respect to mass transit, they will need to be instructed otherwise. Anyway,
That's all
So
I
much
have,
for that.
Mr. Mayor.
all right, committee updates, Jack?
None.
I just wanted to say our first Arts Council event of 2018 is this Thursday at Turtle Point Clubhouse. It's Quentin Baxter and Rodney Jordan Quintet. And our art films start this Friday. The first set of art films, at least until the Sandcastle is open again, will be held right here at Town Hall.
Okay. All right, citizens' comments?
Happy New Year.
Same to you?
It's nice to be back finally.
Diane Leader, 306 Palmore Road. Last week, the Trump administration announced plans to open drilling along the eastern seaboard, including along the coast of South Carolina. And today's Post and Courier reported that Scalp plans to challenge this in court. I understand they're looking for communities to sign on to back that. Although from what I read, it did not appear they were looking for any of the communities to contribute toward the cost of that. I was just wondering what plans the town has to review this issue again, to discuss it and to take a position.
You know, I read the article briefly this morning, and that's about all that I know about it. So I'm really not smart enough right now to even think about what the town may or may not want to do. What I will say is that we've addressed this issue, both this town council and the prior one. We've passed 2 resolutions that that indicated what the town's view was with respect to the issue, and I think for the most part, I'm inclined to think that the town council will probably conclude that what we've done is sufficient, and I will doubt that we will do anything else, but frankly, there has not been any conversation with town council, and we'll have that.
So you're assuming then that your position before would stand?
I say that again?
So you're assuming that your position before would just stand, that you wouldn't take any additional?
That would be my guess.
Okay.
But I can't speak for the other members of the council yet.
I also understand that the Island Connection has not been sending a reporter here regularly to cover these meetings, and I just wondered if you had any concern about coverage in the paper being written by someone who's not in attendance.
We are streaming the meetings now, and my understanding
Okay,
is that she has been following our meetings by watching them online, either live or taped. Is that correct? Yeah.
Okay, I just know as I'm sitting here, there's a lot that it's difficult to follow because the audio
Yeah.
or whatever, so,
Okay,
thanks.
thank you. Virginia?
4304 Seaforest Drive. I would, following up with what Diane said, I really would encourage you to, again, state your concerns about drilling. I just think, just to stand on what you said before, this is a serious issue for South Carolina. But on a much smaller note, I know I spoke with Mayor Weaver about the renourishment in front of Windswept. And I know you said that perhaps you would have another possible permit in January. I hope you will put Windswept 1 on that permit, because it was sad to me to see you taking sand from right in front of our building and moving it down the way. It was like insult to injury. Please.
Okay, thanks.
Consider that.
I would like to say that we recently sent out a questionnaire to the Environmental Committee asking them about concerns they might have about Kiowa in the future, what they like, what they don't like environmentally and all. And one of the answers so far that came back addressed your issue about, you know, they would like that to be a discussion point at one of our environmental meetings. So it has come up with the environmental group.
I agree with Ginny. I do think you should address it.
I'm Roger Warren, excuse me, 39 Cotton Hall. First of all, relative to the ordinance about making sure that you're getting the taxes collected for rentals and so forth, I can say as the manager of the largest rental organization on the island, I appreciate it as a matter of equity in terms of competition with those people who are in the business, who do not have business licenses, who do not pay the current taxes as they're supposed to, mainly the A tax. And I would encourage you to go after it aggressively. And I think that all you see right now are continuing growth, both in use of VRBO and all of the other online self-serve agencies that make it much more difficult to police. And in a time when there seems to be a high amount of discussion about security and who's getting on the island and how, and there are a lot of, I think, unfair and unnecessary shots taken at the resort about how people come on and off this island. I get disturbed when I see postings online where people have no clue who they're renting to or where they're coming from. But yet there doesn't seem to be any issue with security with that. So I think that as a matter of equity, I appreciate what you're going to do. I encourage the enforcement of it and hope you'll do that. The second issue I wanted to comment to was the position you would take on drilling in the southeast. I object to the representation of a town council who says they're taking a position on behalf of the community before you've ever surveyed the community and how the community feels about it. You may hear from a few people or a large a percentage of people on this island who take a position. I think it's important when you represent an opinion about an issue as significant as this, that you find a way to survey people to find out what their opinion is, and not just listen to a percentage of voices who take the position and no one else speaks. And many times, the people who don't speak have a different opinion. And I'd like to make sure that when you do that, that you take some kind of survey so we understand what the people of this community really do feel about it. I won't be surprised if the representation that you've given is consistent, but I think you owe it to the community when you represent it, when you make a statement representing the community, that you get input from everybody who wants to respond, and I'd appreciate that. The last issue that was brought up about the renourishment, thank you for the process you've gone through for renourishment. If it was needed, And I have to tell you, compliment you and commend you on how much you didn't have to spend to do it by using the process that you did. And anyone who would complain about taking sand from in front of theirs to build the sand down someplace else is got a narrow perspective in my mind, because that sand comes back repeatedly. It renourishes in terms of what you've taken. You can see it day to day. So I wouldn't get too upset or concerned about comments about the process. The process worked, it is working, and I want to thank you for it. And we're happy as the resort to contribute to the financial cost of this. You asked and we said yes, and we appreciate the fact that you're willing to step up and do what you did. Our concern is that what we've done is just a first stage. We're going to need to look at more significant renourishment going on if we really want to protect the value of our property on this island on the ocean side. And I think there are other issues that strategically you will be talking about in the future relative to drainage and flow of water over the island. I think that the most recent storm was a big wake-up call as to what can happen in the future here, and I don't believe we should wait to make a plan for what you should do. I think the strategic meeting you're going to have and the discussion is going to be vital, important, in how we can protect property values and egress to this island on and off. And I think that that's important. I want to thank you for discussing that in your next strategy meeting. And Craig, I'd like to commend you on the length of this meeting. Keep it up. Thank you.
This is actually one of our longer ones. So. Any other citizens' comments? All right, thank you, all of you, for your comments. I appreciate it. With that, we do not have any executive session planned. So unless there are any other issues, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
And to you.
We were.
That's pretty famous.
Make the Jones Island. No, I signed that too.
I'll be